Shut up and sit down.
Good morning, afternoon, or evening from wherever you're listening across the world. Welcome to another episode of Just Ball Things. With me today, as always, is the J-Man, Jack Manuel. My brain is not working today. It seems to be doing this quite often, Jack. I think work has really gotten me down. Anyway, how are you?
Brucey!
How are you?
Get around Brucey,
buddy. Oh, get around Brucey. I've got the backdrop. I think it is definitely different, but it's the same poster because I put the scarf around there. Just, something different. The dogs are up and at 'em. You've got the Brucey haircut. The hair tie, I guess, with the samurai look. You just need to grow that ripper stash, and you'll be kicking 10 goals against North Melbourne as well, buddy boy. I have no doubt. It all flows from the hair. Every time I watch that JBT intro, I'm like, maybe we should get a new intro. But that shot will just be forever ingrained in our history. My name is Nick Busink, and mate, I'm living my best life today. It is a hot day in Melbourne. I got the aircon on. I had the door open so I could get to some fresh air. Chels quickly put a stop to that one. I'm too loud. But I'm also wearing no pants. And this is great. Even less pants than what I normally wear when you're in the room with me and you say I have no pants. I'm not wearing shorts. I'm just straight up wearing underpants. And I won't stand up for the people. I'll just let your imaginations run wild. But I'm living my best life, Jackie boy.
You're going to push everyone away from YouTube, Nick, and back to the podcast platform and Spotify and everything.
You can't see me. This is the beautiful thing. I mean, I wear no pants at work. Technically, because I work from home, and it's great. I mean, like pajama bottoms, moccasins, or I'm just straight up wearing no pants. And on hot days, mate, you gotta live how, you gotta live to your own tune. Live to your own, or dance to your own beat, drum, whatever the fucking expression is. It doesn't matter. You gotta do you, and I'm doing me right now, and this is great. I get to record a podcast in my underwear. What better time is there?
Absolutely.
All right, Jackie boy. You can contact us, as always, on Twitter, at JBTNick, or at the J-Man JBT. We're also closely affiliated with OTG Basketball. They've got an awesome podcast and YouTube network where you can keep up to date with all things NBA. Make sure you give them a follow on Twitter at OTG Basketball, and of course on YouTube at OTG Basketball, where you can watch all JBT. And I hope you're watching us right now there. Facebook.com/JustBallThings. You can give us a like and a follow there, or jbtpodcast@gmail.com. where we'll read your emails out on the show if you send them in. Any questions, comments, concerns, please do. Also on the DMs, that is fine. We'll start off here, Jackie boy, because we want to watch some Richmond, Sydney. With the Busey Manuel scale. For those of you who are new, there's a JBT created scale that sums up how likely things are to happen in the NBA. We scale it on alternative fact, Twitter fact, Wikipedia fact, or just a straight up fact. Mate, the Brooklyn Nets. Is this Brooklyn Bits? Let's play some Brooklyn Bits. Jackie boy, it's always nice to talk some Brooklyn with you, the Brooklyn head. The Brooklyn Nets have an unfair competitive advantage in the buyout market.
Look, Nick, this is an alternative fact, because if we're going by historical numbers, the Brooklyn Nets aren't even... This is the first season that they've even gotten someone in the buyout market in my recent memory since I've been a fan.
But don't worry. No. This is not about recent history. This is literally about what happened a week ago, 2 weeks ago, however long ago it was.
To be honest, Nick, the Milwaukee Bucks have gotten more buyout guys over the past couple of seasons than the Brooklyn Nets have.
And the past couple of seasons, Jackie boy.
And that's continued this season with Austin Rivers, who I think is going to be a quality, matchup for the likes of Kyrie Irving, James Harden in the backcourt if we do happen to face the Milwaukee Bucks. Look, Marcus Aldridge, Blake Griffin. There are plenty of small market teams who gallivanting about the fact that the Brooklyn Nets have all these dudes. It's not fair. The league's broken. They need to change the rules. Honestly, the buyout actually does, for the Detroit Pistons and the San Antonio Spurs, it allowed the San Antonio Spurs to acquire Gorgie Jang. It allowed, who I believe is a better player, and I actually kind of wanted on the Brooklyn Nets, as I've seen the Brooklyn Buzzard quite a few times. It also allowed the Detroit Pistons to save a lot of money because Blake Griffin gave $13 million back. So the ownership and the front office there are allowed to use that money in a much greater respect. So for me, it just makes so much sense why I don't understand why it's so like the Brooklyn Nets are breaking the league, blah blah blah
it's
blah
the
blah.
Names.
I don't think
it's
that's
the
the
names,
case,
Jackie boy, that have come. Obviously, the name bears more weight than the actual player. Austin Rivers does not bear the same weight as LaMarcus Aldridge, as Blake Griffin, because these guys were once upon a time tremendous players. I mean, they're all-stars, especially as famous as Blake Griffin was, as I guess as much of a personality he is I guess he's a bigger name. And these players were both in, maybe less than ideal circumstances, given, where they wanted to be. That's definitely the case for Blake Griffin, maybe not so much LMA, but, things over the past few years for LaMarcus have not been going so well at the Spurs. And not only do they get, maybe definitely aging stars that are not nearly in their prime anymore, they're also getting players that were so low on the, I guess their value on both these players were so low because of, maybe it was an effort thing, it was a new situation thing. And so when you guys get gifted is probably not the right word, but when you make these shrewd acquirements, and then they stop playing like they did at their previous teams, and they start playing, under limited minutes, that suits them as well. They start looking like their old selves again. Obviously not to the extent of they're not playing 30 minutes and putting up, 20-ish points a game. But if they're playing 15 minutes, they're still putting up 10, 12 points a game. That, Blake Griffin putting put-back dunks. And I always thought that this would be the case. And when the whole thing that Blake Griffin is washed because he hasn't made a dunk in wherever, I'm like, he plays for the Detroit Pistons. He's not happy. He's not motivated. He probably doesn't give a shit. He doesn't want to. And that translates into obviously not a lot of stats, and not a lot of people watch the Detroit Pistons anyway. So then they put 2 and 2 together and be like, well, Blake Griffin's done. His career's over. So it doesn't matter that he's going to the Nets. And that is such an oversight. These guys know what it means to be stars on a team, and they're not anymore, but they know what it means to be good. They know what it takes to be good because they were once very good. And so that sort of, I guess, mentality, coupled with their actual skill and their ability to contribute in a lesser role, is just so brilliant by the Nets. And that's all it is. It's not unfair because everyone had a chance at these players, and if the player is happy to be the 8th person on the roster, especially if you're the likes of, of these two stars, then, all power to them. They want a championship, and they feel that Brooklyn is the best place for that. And it's looking likely, Jackie boy.
Look, there's still a long way to go, Nick. You know me. I keep a lid on things. I've kept the lid on things, whether it's the Brooklyn Nets or the Geelong Cats in yesteryear. But ultimately, Nick, the point about the sort of the buyout market, it does certainly advantage the markets that are more are championship ready. Whether it's the Los Angeles Lakers, whether it's the Bucks, whether it's the Golden State Warriors. And that's where the competitive advantage is.
But that's not unfair because the Brooklyn Nets 4 years ago were a complete joke. The Lakers 4 years ago were a complete joke. No one wanted to go to those teams. It didn't matter that they were in LA. It didn't matter that they were in New York. Now that they're good and they're in New York and they're in LA, that's positive. That's obviously more favorable.
Like, who wants to go to Cleveland and Milwaukee to live? Those are the top two teams in buyout market players.
LeBron James, when he was at when he was there, was convincing a whole heap of buyout players to go to.
But you talk about the market itself. It's about the winning environment and the chances of winning, because these guys, you need to change your expectations of them. It's not LaMarcus Aldridge on a $28 million contract in the finals alongside Kawhi Leonard. It's not Blake Griffin, willing the Detroit Pistons in a playoff series and coming third or fourth in the MVP voting. This is both of those guys on vet minimum contracts. And if anything, there should be a lot more uproar about the fact that the Brooklyn Nets have Jeff Green on a vet minimum, have Tyler Johnson on a vet minimum, and they have Joe contributing 28 points tonight, and they've got all these old players, and Nicholas Claxton with the second round pick. They were still able to keep him despite the trade for James Harden. They were still able to keep a promising young center. I think that's where a lot of the criticism and a lot of the uproar should be heading, Nick, because ultimately,
but that's got nothing to do with the Nets. That's got nothing. That's solely on the players. The Nets floated, hey, if you want to come join our super team, you're going to have to be on the vet minimum because we can't afford you in any other capacity.
We can, Nick, because the Nets do have the disabled player exception to offer because of Spencer Dinwiddie's injury, and they do also have the taxpayer MLE because they haven't used that. And, the fact that they haven't, there's still one more roster spot. I believe it'll likely go to Alize Johnson. I like what he's doing on his 10-day contracts. But I just see that there's just a readjusting of the goalposts, it seems, around the Brooklyn Nets. And I like it. I like being a part of a fan base that is now sort of like villains of some sort. It's sort of been that way for me being a Cat supporter for quite a while. I'm sort of used to it. But it's just like, okay, now it's like we hate Katie and Kyrie. Well, Kyrie's a cancer. Or James Harden, what's he doing? And he's a cancer. Oh, it's not going to work there. One ball, all this BS. Every narrative just keeps getting adjusted and keep getting changed depending on what Skip Bayless or Stephen A. Smith want to talk about on a night-by-night basis. Kyrie Irving needs to retire. James Harden's not an MVP candidate. Kevin Durant's not going to be healthy by the playoffs. It's just they will always change it to fit whatever their narrative needs are, and whatever the clickbait, whatever gets us the news day. Ultimately, Nick, I just think that what Sean Marks has done, building this team, like you had alluded to, from nothing. Literally, we were on the bottom of the bottom. Just getting assets, acquiring well in the draft, taking on picks, taking on Damari Carroll, all these different sort of things. And obviously, market does play some sort of part, because I don't think Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving were going to join together to play in, Indiana. But ultimately, market does have some sort of part to play. But in the buyout market, I think what you alluded to, it's about winning chips. Justin Verjao, David West, these guys go to the championship. We see Austin Rivers going to Milwaukee. We see Andre Drummond going to Los Angeles. The Miami Heat were in the market for LaMarcus Aldridge. They were obviously in the finals last year as well. And the Sixers are always around the wings as well. They got Marco Bellinelli and Ersan Ilyasova a couple of years ago when they were really contending and playing some great basketball. It's about... obviously, there is an argument against that. You look at Wes Matthews in Indiana, but ultimately, it's two things: it's either championship or it's role. And if you are looking to, maximize your next contract, you're going to go to the team that can give you the most minutes. If you're looking to get a ring because you've been in the league for 10, 15 seasons and you've got all the money in the bank, you've got all the accolades, you've got all the All-Stars and All-NBA nods that you need, then, you go to Brooklyn, you go to LA, you go to the Clippers, you go to all the teams. And I think that the advantage, look, maybe there are changes that need to be made. I need to look at it from a more objective basis, purely on the fact that, it shouldn't be that way. But ultimately, the teams are the ones giving out these contracts in the first place. You're resting these players and taking them away and decreasing their trade value in the first place. That's what the Spurs did. That's what the Cavs did, and that's exactly what the Pistons did too. So you can't have it both ways as a small market team. And it's not the San Antonio Spurs. I don't think they're in this conversation. But you look at the Cavs as they are right now. Sans LeBron James. But I think it's a discussion that we're both on the same page of, Nick. And I think a lot of people just want to find something to hate on with the Brooklyn Nets. And to be honest, it's kind of fun.
I mean, don't hate the player, hate the game, and I guess that's what a lot of people are saying, how rules need to change. But I don't know. I think that Brooklyn have made such shrewd investments and shrewd moves in the past 4 years that have set themselves up to build up piece by piece. 2 years ago they weren't landing these buyout guys, but you get the good culture. You establish some good role players, some good young guys. You get assets in your Leverts, your Dinwiddies, your Joe Harrises. You make the move. You say, hey, we're ready now. You get your Kyrie Irving. Beautiful. One chip down. That lures another superstar, another two superstars. Well, not superstar, but DeAndre Jordan. That leads to major head coaching changes because they've got this vision. So it's just a game of chess right now. It's one step moving to the next, and that has led to all these buyout guys being like, "Hey, you've built yourself something real promising here. I want to join you," and that is just all power to the Brooklyn Nets. I hope that, and the fact that maybe bigger teams can afford better staffers, things that aren't on the salary cap to make these decisions, better GMs, better front office staff. So I look at a team like us, who maybe our GM's not the best, and of course he's fucking not. But what sort of GM is the Washington Wizards going to attract? What sort of front office, if you're at the apex of your job, are you going to want to really build up a franchise like Washington? Or are you going to want to take your skills to someone who could probably pay you massive amount of money in the New York Knicks, in the Clippers, in the Lakers? The Clippers not so much, but that's more they're in the city than being a big team. But to Chicago, these big teams that generate lots of money. So that's an element to it, but you can't. At what point do you stop policing the league? The salary cap is I guess that idea that you can get paid the same in no matter what situation you get in. I don't know. It's not unfair. It's just incredibly smart by the Nets, and theoretically every team can do this.
Yeah, we're lucky. And a team that I think has added, but not necessarily in the buyout market, Nick, is the Denver Nuggets. And I put to you, Denver, your favorite team, my friend, the Nuggets are a better team with Aaron Gordon than Jeremy Grant.
Ooh, I caught a couple of... obviously, the buyout market led to some big changes in the league. So I caught a couple of... I shouldn't say a couple of games, a couple of minutes of multiple games for the Denver Nuggets, as is my busy lifestyle. Can't catch them all, but that's it. But Aaron Gordon looks good on the Nuggets, and not often do pundits sort of reviews on these things really eventuate. There are obviously little niches to the game that that can affect how these players play. But everything I heard about the Aaron Gordon trade is coming to fruition, and we're seeing it in these highlights. Literally, just Aaron Gordon cuts to the rim, and the quality in the the passing in this team, they're just finding Gordon. The athleticism that maybe a team like the Nuggets is lacking is certainly being filled by by Aaron Gordon, and his numbers aren't going to jump off the page at you since he's been gone. This play in itself is beautiful. This is just Jokic. God, he's good. I'm liking the Nuggets now, Jackie boy. I'm in on the players. Still not in on the coach, but I'm in on the players. 180. I'm in on the players. His numbers aren't going to scream out. 11 points. Not super effective from the three, but 57% from the field because he's getting these looks inside. He's an effective piece on this team, but to make him to say that they're going to be better, and it's only been 3 games, I guess, than with Jeremy Grant. I don't know. I guess the jury's still out, but they are looking good with Gordon. It fills a lot of needs that the Nuggets needed. And it just seems that, rarely all of the things prior to the trade about Aaron Gordon, or prior to them playing their first game, certainly coming to fruition here. But this may be a honeymoon period, Jackie boy. Jury's still out.
No, It's a fair point. We're very, very early on into the Aaron Gordon tenure in Denver, but I'm going to give it a wiki fact, Nick, because Jeremy Grant was super for them, especially in the postseason. And maybe if you put the current version of Jeremy Grant, it would change things quite a bit. But he wasn't necessarily given the opportunity to play that role. And Jeremy Grant was good defensively, and I think Aaron Gordon can be good defensively as well. He's already proven that against Kawhi Leonard, one of the best isolation players in the league. Aaron Gordon has now a niche to be able to fit into, a role that suits him absolutely perfectly. And I also do think that the ripple effects across the roster are already being felt. Michael Porter doesn't have the defense burden and allows him to just absolutely be a flame. He's credible the past couple of weeks. Al Murray, obviously, it eases the burden of just having another guy there to pass to. A vertical threat, and it also allows you to lessen the roles of JaMychal Green and Paul Millsap, these sort of players as well. And you have JaVale McGee, who's a sneaky nice little trade piece that they did acquire too. So Denver did make some nice moves, and ultimately overall, Jeremy Grant was good on LeBron James in those finals. He wasn't amazing. I actually think Aaron Gordon can be better. Now, we haven't necessarily seen this defensive acumen from him like we're starting to see from him in Denver, but I think now he's just had the narrowing of his role, and it's just like, we need you to do these things. We don't want you to be Draymond Green times 10 and do all these different things and shoot the three ball and be LeBron James. We don't want you to be our best player. We want you to be our fourth best player.
Less responsibility on the Magic than on the Magic. Really can let a lot of players flourish, having either lesser minutes, lesser role, having that clarity of role, because I think there may have been some confusion as to what he was actually being asked to do at the Magic, maybe being asked to do too much, things that are outside.
Playing at the three, he was playing at the full,
like, things that are outside his skill set, so that can really muddy the waters. Whereas in a situation where you've got most of the bases covered, he can just slot in nicely to be this athletic big who offers. And that was one thing that I did notice in these games, as well as cutting to the basket, like you said, just being active on defense. And this could be, hey, new team, I'm motivated. A lot of defensive acumen has got to do with effort. And he was, my God, in those first couple of games, he was giving it his all, which is fantastic to see.
Definitely. And look, we'll see how it pans out, but the Denver Nuggets are on the rise. Jokic is doing incredible things. He's certainly solidifying his MVP case, and I think Aaron Gordon certainly does help that as well. But a guy who would probably be solidifying his MVP case if he was healthy, and after today's performance, the Golden State Warriors, I'll put this to you, Nick. This is probably something I should have changed in the doc. Dragging the Warriors to near 500 would rank as the greatest achievement in Stephen Curry's career. Now, based off today's game, if he can get them to 500, then it is better than him winning back-to-back MVPs, including a unanimous one, and also winning 3 chips along the way in that journey too. Because, man, they look rough against the Toronto Raptors without one of their best players as well.
I did not catch this game, but I saw the notifications come through my phone, and it was literally a double take. I'm just like, oh, whoa, 60 points. It was like 60 points, like the game wasn't even over. It was like through 3 quarters or something. And it was something like 130 to 70 or something in the end.
Yeah, 56
margin. Yeah, something like that, yeah. Which is bad. And then I guess this just gives fuel to this point. The Warriors are just bad. They're a bad team that just they've got this amazing spine. In obviously Clay, who isn't there, Steph, and maybe not Draymond anymore.
No, I think Draymond, Nick, he obviously was out tonight as well. But focusing, I guess, just on the Steph part of it, he has been like amazing.
He's been incredible. They've got this amazing spine, and then just a bunch of Andrew Wiggins is a fucking.
He's been okay.
No, Jack. No. Stop believing in Andrew Wiggins.
I think we align our expectations. It's like the same with the discussion around LaMarcus Aldridge and Blake Griffin. If you discount the contract, Andrew Wiggins has been a good player this season. He's improved defensively. He's been much better as an athletic force and actually using that to his advantage.
Should Andrew Wiggins be, on that bar though? Should he have that bar of comparison, or should his bar be greater? Given the contract, given the prospect, given a myriad of other things since he's been into the league. This is an Andrew Wiggins discussion. We always go on tangents
stages on this podcast. So back to, I guess, the Steph side of things. I don't think he's also been given the opportunities to flourish even greater because of what the system is in Golden State and what Steve Kerr wants out of his players. The beautiful ball system that he got from San Antonio, but he doesn't have the players and the cattle to do so right now. Sometimes you just need to go, all right, I've got Stephen Curry, I've got Draymond Green, I've got James Wise, and then I've got Andrew Wiggins. Let's do some pick and roll action and get that ball fizzing around. Let's see if we can get some open.
Maybe a little bit of dirty basketball. Maybe you're relying a little bit on
simplify it, and you just put the ball in Steph Curry's hands and you allow him to be great. He is going to be great. He's one of the best players in the history of this game. And I've sort of advocated, even earlier in the season when we were talking about Stephen Curry and the Golden State Warriors, for a more heliocentric style of play for them, because he is that amazing. In maybe not, I don't necessarily know if he could do what James Harden has done in Houston for such a long period of time, just because I think Harden's durability is something that is underrated, and Stephen Curry is in his mid-30s right now, but one season of it, or at least just a better variation or style of play, I think would be better. And ultimately, overall, he has been incredible. His absence is clearly pronounced when he does.
The 4 games, the 5. I guess he missed 5 games due to that lower back injury, and they lost 4 of them out of 5. They lost 4 out of 5. And then the day he comes back, he puts 32 against Chicago, and then he puts 36 against Miami in a loss, but still, the guy's incredible, and we're seeing highlights of him now, and they're just all from literally, I'd say 90% of these highlights, and you just watch him on the play, is give and go threes, which are just incredible. It's such an MO of Steph. That constant movement is so hard to defend. And even if he's not receiving the ball at the other end, he's got such gravity. He's dragging defenders either out of the key or around the 3-point arc. He's manipulating, and he's like this marionette. Just really playing with defenses. It's quite incredible to watch, and this is nothing new. This is what he's been doing for years. He just doesn't have the caliber of team around him now, especially with the injuries. The Warriors right now are just ravaged. But it would be truly amazing if Steph can drag this team to a somewhat, even playoff level would be awesome. Greatest achievement? I don't know. Probably not, because you're thinking, they made playoffs and they were bounced first round. But greatest achievement stings a little bit, but it would still speak to how great he is.
Yeah, I think putting it in perspective, taking a bad team, you look at the roster and you look at what's there on paper, to average is a heck of an achievement. And what does it mean to take a great on paper team with Mark Jackson before Steve Kerr got there and make it historically great? Obviously, with his leadership and a lot of his skills and prowess, what is the greater achievement there? It's hard to sort of put in perspective, and it's a really subjective thing. I do think that this might be one of the 3 or 4 best things that he's ever done individually, but nothing's going to beat the unanimous MVP season, because that was the season that changed the style of basketball. It changed the league for what it is, and we're seeing right now teams mimic basically him and the Golden State Warriors style. Jack up 40. If you're a bad team, the math shows that if you jack up 43s and you hit at least 15 of them, you're going to still be in with the shot. And
look at the change of the Jazz. Look at the massive shift the Jazz have had this year has been solely on the 3-point shot. It's coupled with just an incredible defense as well, but their offense is clicking because they're just shooting threes at an incredible clip, and they're just killing teams because they're suffocating them on defense and just exploding on offense.
Yeah, it's all, and we've had sort of people compare the Utah Jazz to the first iteration of the Golden State Warriors, and let's chill out a little bit. It's one of the greatest dynasties in the history of this sport, but the way they have been playing is Golden State-esque, in terms of the talent and the style of basketball, and also being incredible defensively, which is something that Golden State did do really, really well. And Steph was a part of that as well. I don't think he got a lot of credit. We always think of the
his
the Kevin Love
activity,
moments in
his activity was just brilliant on both ends. Like, and you're right. Like, his ability to read the play and get the steal was just an important part of that defense. It wasn't a lockdown one-on-one because he's just not that guy. He's not big and strong enough, you know. But they had those guys. They had the Draymonds. They had the friggin' Clays. You know, no one's perfect, but you need to build a team to fill holes that other players don't have, and they just did it so well.
Yeah, if they do somehow, make the playoffs, play-in tournament, and Steph is healthy, I wouldn't want to face them in a postseason matchup because
Sure.
I think Steph, given the reins and just given the keys to the car to just cook and drive at 100 miles an hour, you don't want to face a dude that talented because ultimately that's when talent shines. Individual talent shines in the postseason. That's when the guys really step up. Your Kevin Durant, your LeBron James, your Kawhi Leonard, all these dudes just go bang, bang, bang. Luka Doncic as well in the limited time that he has had. And Stephen Curry obviously does get some slights about his postseason resume, but I think it goes unheralded about what he has done. I think he has very, very good and borderline great in that department too.
For sure. Before we move on, Jackie boy, I want to put this to you. If, say, the Warriors do make it, and I'm looking at the standings right now, say they do, let's say they make the play-in and that's a bad example. Because I've got to say, if they win their first round, it'll be against the Jazz, and that would just be amazing. If the Golden State Warriors make the playoffs, no matter where they are, and they beat whoever their first round opponent is, whether it be the Jazz, Suns, Clippers, Lakers, let's say that's the top four. Is that has to be a bigger achievement than actually making the playoffs at all? And that I think. Strangely enough, that I think is more likely if the Warriors can somehow scrape a playoff berth, even if they make it into the play-in and win. I somehow, deep down, and I have no reason to believe this other than just a gut, I feel like the likelihood of them beating their first-round opponent than him... I don't know where I'm going with this.
Getting to the playoffs in the first place.
Like getting to the playoffs in the first place.
I think what you're saying, Nick, is that the fact that the regular
season... Once you're there, it's a different game. And we've said this a million times. So I think them winning their first round is actually more likely than making the playoffs in the first place, which is sort of, as I was saying it in my head, I'm just like, this doesn't really make sense. But
all you have to do, Nick, is you've only got to win 4 games. And I think that in a limited space and just having that end goal in sight is much easier than right now slogging through night after night after night after arduous loss and demolishing and demoralizing loss. And it's a marathon. That's what they say about the regular season. Obviously, it's sort of like a sprint marathon in regards to this 72 game season as well. So, and obviously Stephen Curry's health in relation to that too. It's just like, if he's healthy, 4 games to Stephen Curry, then watch out. But you still got to have to another 25, 30 games of him. And what's he going to do there? Can he be healthy for 20 to 22 of those games going forward? It is a different sort of set of circumstances that never doubt Steph. He was preseason my pick for the MVP. Certainly not going to be the case, but a guy who has won it, Nick, and we argued about last night when you came over to my house, is your boy Russell Westbrook. Let's do some Wizards woes, big fella.
The Washington Wizards is making noise.
I drank some bleach all the way down to the blue, and now I'm starting to feel like Harry Potter.
Yes, Jackie boy. Bit of a jam on that one. We love to dance around. Catch us on the YouTube at OTG Basketball every Sunday American time, whatever it is. Whatever. Russell Westbrook, as you alluded to, his numbers do not matter because he doesn't have a title. But never say never, Jackie boy. He might win one with the Wizards. No, that is obviously ludicrous. We are never winning a title. This was obviously come about because of some comments, some spicy comments that Stephen A. Classic had, essentially saying exactly that the numbers that he was putting up, maybe it was maybe a game ago, a couple of games ago. Ooh, I should know this. Doesn't matter because he doesn't have that ring. He's played with a great caliber of players over his years and hasn't really made much of a much of a move. You know, he mentioned things like when Kevin Durant left, he didn't even make it out of the first round. And until he got to Houston, and even then, because he was playing with James Harden, essentially a lot of hate towards, Westbrook, and now even at the Wizards, these sort of empty stats don't really correlate. They're not correlating to wins, and yeah, there was a bit of pushback on that one, Jackie boy. A little bit from myself. I do understand, especially now that he plays for my team, and it's a whole new appreciation. And like, I get it, Thunder fans, I get it, Houston fans. Like, maybe I didn't watch, I didn't watch him, I didn't watch him enough. And you know, you watch him in the marquee games, and he's a different guy. You watch him when he's on, you watch those highlight packages, and by God, he's got a good highlight package. This guy can single-handedly win you a game. He can also single-handedly lose you a game. And I mean, and that is one of his knocks on him, when he is, and maybe that's all people can see, and that's all I could see for a very, very long time. You obviously see what he does on the court, and that's it. And we're seeing some highlights now, and the guy of late has been playing incredibly with Bradley Beal out. It's his team. The 30-point, 20 assist triple-double that he had was historic. And I think we lost that game, but it doesn't, and that's what Stephen A is getting at. It's like, these empty stats, it doesn't actually mean shit. Not necessarily because you don't have a title, because it's not leading to meaningful wins, but his impact off the court is what I really, really respect about Westbrook. And this is something that I really didn't give enough credence when he played on other teams, because I didn't have to care. I didn't have to care about how he was developing, young guys, his relationship with coaching staff, his activity on the training, on the training ground. Like, it didn't matter. It's just what mattered was on the court. And I'm seeing all of this stuff, obviously, because I'm a lot bigger of a follower of Wizards Twitter, and I see a lot of stuff from off the court, and it's tremendous. And the guy's work ethic is infectious. And if he's inspiring people with these plays, I mean, it doesn't, despite the fact that 21 assists, that's at least 42 points that he's created, plus the 36 that he created. To say that he's not having an impact on the court is crazy. And I think flack should not be. It shouldn't even come close to Westbrook. It's not him. It's the situation he's been put in. It's Brooks, it's Leonsis, it's all of these guys who aren't actually taking on the court. It's just players like Russell Westbrook get the flack for this shit. It's just like, well, you're putting up stats in an empty, you're putting up stats on a losing team. So, what good are you? It's like, well, are they really losing because Russell Westbrook put up 36 and 20 assists? No. I mean, they're probably losing when Russell Westbrook shoots 1 of 19. Probably. But there are greater things wrong. We have seen this in the Wizards franchise for years. There are greater things than what's on the court wrong with this franchise. So I'm not even close to being in agreement with this. Everyone's sort of a product of their environment. Russell Westbrook is no different. The guy is incredible, and he's so fun to watch. He's always been fun to watch. My criticisms of him at OKC, I now have a greater appreciation of him because he plays for my team. And maybe I was wrong back in those days, maybe. But I don't know. I'm not willing to say that I was wrong because I don't like being wrong. Despite the fact I'm always wrong most of the time. But Russell Westbrook's stats don't matter because he's not on a title team. I mean, there's heaps of people that haven't won titles, Jackie boy. And I guess that's the argument that their careers have still mattered. They've still made impact all over the league. Like you see about how Denny and Rui are talking about Russell Westbrook on the court, and that's what matters to me because that's the Wizards' future. these guys that we've decided to, not trade at the deadline, like they're learning so much from Russell Westbrook, just even how to be a professional on the court, and that's his lasting impact at the Wizards.
And look, to be honest, Nick, it goes back to the whole ranks argument. We don't need to get into that, but I did want to also talk about the fact that the narrow set of criteria that a lot of people seem to assume is just like you are successful or you're unsuccessful. If you don't have a ring, you're not successful. But Russell Westbrook and his partner and his wife made a very impassioned argument that I totally agree with, in the fact that success is what you define it as. Yeah. And Russell Westbrook has clearly a successful player and had a successful career, as have many, many others. And it sort of goes back, I guess, to the buyout, sort of debate. It's just like, will Blake Griffin and LaMarcus Aldridge be thought of differently because they've got a ring? Not to me, no. I think that all those guys have made their impact individually. Their success is immense, and it doesn't need to be.
I don't think it'll impact their legacy, but I understand it from a personal perspective. You want to know what it's like to go deep in the playoffs. You want to see what it's like to have that ring, to that excitement. You're seeing ring ceremonies every year of these guys on potentially different teams, especially this year, seeing ring ceremonies with different teams. You want that feeling, and I would want that feeling. My God, and I would be the player who would bounce around the league to get that ring. And that's just me. Like, you want to taste the ultimate success, and I get it. But that doesn't mean that you're successful or not. That you're right. Success is what you make of it. If 5 years down the track, Russell Westbrook sees some development in the Wizards players, or even some Houston players that he may have mentored.
Stephen A. Smith isn't going to give a shit about that.
No, that's right. He's going to be looking. He's going to be watching the TV, and he'll be like, "I did that. I impacted this guy." And the conversations that he have that aren't in front of the media, he might be texting these guys and be like, "Hey, man," like, is that exactly the mentor role that Kobe had, after he was after he had retired. That can mean more than any playing, it depends on how you value it, but that can mean more than any play that you've done can do. And, like, you as a teacher especially know that, like, you're probably, you're not proud that you can read, however many words a second, and how to speak you've got a large vocabulary. But if one of your kids starts using stuff that you've taught in the classroom, that's a moment of pride. And I honestly can't wait for Russell Westbrook to retire, because I think he will just be a fabulous coach, whether it's head coach or if it's offensive coach, and he is sort of an assistant coach to someone who's, be higher up pulling the strings. But he commands so much respect in this league, and he knows what he's talking about. He can motivate. I think he will be a fantastic coach in the future if he decides to go down that route.
Yeah, look, I agree, but I think he's going to have a profound impact, like you did allude to, Kobe Bryant, all these other sort of people. The legacy that a lot of these superstars do have right now is that the impact in the generations before them. Does Ja Morant exist without a Russell Westbrook? I don't necessarily think so. Yeah. Derrick Rose obviously is a big part of that as well. But ultimately, Nick, I think it's just that live the way you need to live, and you don't need.
You've got to do you, Jack. Russell Westbrook has got to do him. Let me wear my underpants on the podcast. Let him put up 36 points on a losing team.
And ultimately, you don't need to, as much as there is, I got a bit existential on Brooklyn Buzz, and I guess I'm bringing that same sort of mentality here. You don't live to a set of someone else's standards. Stephen A. Smith is just like, I analyze these plays for a living. My job is they are successful if they have a ring or not. And then, it was weird to hear Shaquille O'Neal actually, vouch for someone like Russell Westbrook, and the fact that he doesn't need to have it because he's given so much shit to a co-host of his about that in general. But ultimately, we know that is a bit of a shtick. But Stephen A. Smith, what is his success defined by? The amount of clicks that he gets on a YouTube video or on a Twitter video, the amount of likes or retweets that he gets. It's a very different and a skewed way of defining success, and that's totally fine. However you need to find that level of validation, as long as it's not harmful to anyone else along the way. And Russell Westbrook's stats aren't necessarily harmful unless he's putting up bricks and bricks and bricks, like you sort of alluded to, which can happen. But I will also say that, Nick, he's been pretty damn close to getting the chip. I thought that OKC team in yesterday, if it wasn't for Klay Thompson and Stephen Curry being goddamn otherworldly, I thought that they were the best team, and I thought they were going to win the chip. And a lot of that is Kevin Durant, but Serge Ibaka and Russell Westbrook were incredible too. And the season where they went up against the Miami Heat, they were goddamn babies. And if they had been 2 or 3 years later, then I thought that would have been an even more incredible series. So I think that is success by itself. Just having those matchups and the legacy that he's going to leave as one of the only players to have a triple double season. To keep the Oklahoma City franchise
multiple triple double seasons here, talking Jackie boy. And
look,
I don't put as much thought in the triple double is just a title. It would still be an amazing achievement if he averages multiple seasons of 20, 12, and 9. Not a triple-double. Doesn't have that triple-double title, but I don't give a shit about one rebound. That is equally as impressive. So we're going to look at Russell Westbrook's end-of-career stats and be blown away. This is going to be one of those players where, love him or hate him now, in 10 years' time, he will be remembered. He will be remembered as one of the greatest point guards, despite the fact one of the greatest players to never win a chip, and that's a metric in itself.
Yeah, we've talked about some incredible players and incredible modern players, and we talked about Stephen Curry just then in terms of how he defined the era of basketball. And I just alluded to Ja Morant and the impact that I think that Russell Westbrook has had on his career and just his style of play. Russell Westbrook didn't come into the league as a point guard. He redefined that position in a lot of respects, as did Derrick Rose. I think both of those guys have sort of changed what we can sort of have as expectations for that position. And I think that's a hell of a legacy to leave. And that, to me, is beyond rings and all that sort of lazy jargon that a lot of talking heads like to talk about. But Nick, it's a fascinating discussion to have, because I do like talking about things beyond just what the talking heads like to speak about, and give it a bit more context and nuance that I think it does deserve.
Give it some meat. Yeah, we do enjoy going into these existential conversations here. We're more than a basketball podcast, I guess. Mainly because I don't know much about basketball. But that's why you're here, Jackie boy. That's why you're here. All right, that just about does it.
So call me Samurai Jack, Nick.
Ooh, Samurai Jack, very nice. We're finding nicknames for you left, right, and centre. This is great. The J-Man Samurai Jack, or the Samurai J-Man Jack. No, that doesn't. We'll figure it out. All right, so that just about does it for another week. So thank you for tuning in to Just Ball Things. As always, you can catch us on the podcasts: Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Pocket Casts, Player FM, Spreaker, Spotify. None of these platforms pay us to say their name, but that's where you can find us, or wherever it is you listen to your podcast. Email us in. Where do you listen to our podcast? We'll add it to the list. Do us a solid, leave us a rating review. If you're listening to us on Apple, 5 stars only, please. It helps us out a bunch in terms of rankings. If you're watching us on the YouTube, hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell so you know when fresh content comes out by the OTG network. And it's not just JBT. They've got shit coming out every day, Jackie boy. Let's say every day.
OTGbasketball.com. There's about 10, 11. I don't even know how many podcasts there are. There are that many of them.
There you go. Everything's happening on the OTG network, so make sure you follow them on Twitter and subscribe on YouTube. Make sure, remember, it's you guys that make this show great, so we appreciate any and every post heading our way. So until next week.
Keep balling, superstars.
Ooh.